If you want to understand why people treat you the way that they do, you have to understand human nature. And more importantly, you have to accept what human nature is. And human nature comes down to the fact that people always respond to perceived value. And that the thing that determines, for the largest part, how someone treats you is how valuable they perceive you. And that doesn't necessarily mean like how much money you got or what you can do for them, but it really largely actually comes down to the relative value between you and that person, the relative value discrepancy rather, which means, are you above that person or below that person? Okay, because whenever two people meet, or even groups of people, right, there's always one person that is higher value, for a lack of a better word, than the other person, that is more certain, essentially that sets the tone within that particular interaction. Now this can be in a sales meeting, this can be in a boardroom meeting, this can be in a relational context, this can be in a dating scenario, whatever it may be. But you got to understand that the person who sets the tone, the person who is at the cause within that relational context, relatively between these two people, that is the person who has a relationship on their terms. Okay? Because within that relationship, that person is going to subconsciously enforce their ideas of what a relationship should be like, their opinions, and they're going to subconsciously be accepted to a large extent. Now, this is not extreme. Let's say that you're a murderer, okay, and that you are hanging out with people and you just say, oh yeah, killing people is fine. You know what I mean? And to be honest, I actually think killing people is fine, but it depends on under what circumstances. If you go around and you slap my girlfriend on the ass, you spit in her face, and then, I mean, to be fair, let's say that you just start fucking punching her up, I'll absolutely, go after you. Just let's keep it civil on YouTube. And that would be completely justified by most people's standards. So anyway, it's all context dependent. But my point with this is, obviously something that's too extreme might not enter into someone's mind, but to a certain extent, they're going to accept and adopt your ideologies. If you've ever, just think back within your life, right? And you can probably think of a time where you were just hanging out with a person, and this particular person was someone who's very certain and strong in their opinions, right? And so when you were around that person, you kind of went into their ideology more, right? Even if you fought this and they fought this, now you fought this, kind of in the middle, right? Like you're not as strong on your opinions because you're like, this person thinks this, and this all happens subconsciously. And so now you're gonna not voice your stuff as harshly, okay? That all comes down to who is setting the tone and who is at the cause within a certain interaction, okay? So if you want people, the topic of the video, to treat you better, right? And this can literally be, again, in a romantic relationship and stuff like that. But it can also be, you want to close a higher percentage of deals in sales calls. One of the biggest determiners that's going to allow you to close at a higher rate is you being at the cause and the prospect being at the effect of your ideology, of your standard, of your opinions, etc., right? Of your energetic and communicative force. Because if you're at the effect, then the prospect determines this price is high. Then the prospect determines this is not as valuable, or I don't really need this, or being an action taker is something that is not necessarily good. But if you are setting the tone and are at the cause of the interaction, now you can basically enforce subtly your ideologies and your identity upon that other person, which creates them into the person that they need to be in order to buy, okay? Because ultimately, identity is the strongest force in the human personality, right? So if you're able to shift someone's identity, even if just slightly, within that sales conversation, and that's what I would say, my sales conversations, I don't obviously do them really anymore, but they were never sales conversations. They were literal coaching conversations that led to what would be the best next step. And if the best next step would be to work together, it would be an invitation followed up by a pretty affirmative yes most of the time, because someone had shifted their identity within the call. And if you're able to bring that type of transformation, if you're in a coaching business or in some sort of information business, in a call as a salesperson or as the coach himself, nobody can compete with you. Nobody does that. Everybody just asks low-key stupid questions, right? Very superficial stuff. What's your goal and this and that and why? Well, listen, if you go a layer deeper and actually see, hey, who have you been in the past couple of years that's allowed you to get to this point right now? And who would you need to be, right, if you were to achieve all of these goals? Or let's say that you've already achieved these goals. It's now 2 to 3 years into the future. What change did you make 2 to 3 years ago to allow yourself to get to this point? These kinds of things, right? Now, I'm just naming some random examples off the top of my head, but that is true influence. True influence is when you're able to actually shift someone's identity, right? Because all the other things are much different. Like if you look at a parent that wants to get their kid to do the homework or clean their room, then most parents, they'll take the approach of, okay, if you do your homework, you're gonna get X, Y, Z. Okay, I was at a friend's house and this guy had a system for his kid where he would get like stars if he behaved well, and he would get stars eliminated if he would do some bad, and then if you had X amount of stars, you could get some gift or some shit. I thought it was absolutely not my style, put it this way, right? But either way, you can have those external things and you can have external influences motivate someone, but it's always going to be short term because it's not coming from the core. It's the same idea with confidence. You can like start dressing fancy, and granted I'm a little bit fancy in this video, but I can absolutely go out in a black t-shirt and nothing on my wrists or whatever and absolutely crush it and absolutely walk around with the same energy because it's coming from inside. It's an inside out thing. It's not an outside in thing, which a lot of people think. So with this kid thing, if you truly want to produce change within your kid, the best thing you could do, if you aren't that, right? Like if you're not able to be let's say you have a son and you're not able to be a true father role model, or you just haven't been, or he doesn't look up to you, then the best thing you could actually do is find someone that fits into his value system that he just thinks is truly cool. That crushes it at life, at everything that's important to him, but does it in a way that aligns with how he should be, which is the right way, right? So cleaning your room, no drinking, drugs, whatever, that kind of stuff, right? And or no excessive partying, whatever, and being on your shit, going to the gym, right? This and that. And so if you find a role model like that, now I'll give you an example, right? When I was 18 years old, or 17 rather, 16, 17, from 14 to 16, 17, I was doing a lot of bad shit, a lot of shit that was just gonna land me in prison, basically, right? And I'll just leave it at that. And what I found was at about 16, 17-ish, I found a guy online that to me was just absolutely crushing it in life. Money-wise, women-wise, relationships-wise, confidence-wise, just a cool motherfucker. But the guy always was preaching, don't drink, don't do drugs, don't, look at long-term strategies, not short-term strategies, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this was one of the effects, one of the catalysts for me to really change my ideologies of like doing all this bad shit and the short-term stuff to like, hey, I gotta actually build something long-term here. And so why was that? Why did that happen? Because ultimately all the shit that he preached had been told to me a million fucking times, but I could hear it from him because I valued him, because he was cool in my eyes. So you need a cool role model, a cool person in your eyes to tell you the same shit, and then you're actually going to do it because that is a person you value. And once again, it comes back to the topic of the video. I know we go left, right, center, and in circles in these videos, but that's how I can give the most value across because it's coming from my subconscious, right? And the lessons that I've learned in my life. Like I don't script these videos at all, even though people always tell me to do that. Anyways, that value is ultimately what makes people, right, treat you in a certain way. And your communication towards someone, right, shows someone, this is important, guys, how you speak, what your tonality is, how much you lean forward, how much you lean back, how much eye contact you give someone, all that kind of stuff. How much you say, how much you laugh at what someone else says, that kind of stuff. Every single thing every micro expression, that, right? Tell someone what your price tag is. Tell someone how much to value you, okay? And so if you want people to start treating you differently, you gotta slap a different price tag on your forehead. The example that I usually give is like, listen, if you're running a store and in the store, you just underprice all of your items. Let's say that you have an item that's worth $87 and you price it at 27 bucks, right? That's the price tag on the item. And people keep grabbing the item, going to the counter and obviously buying it for 27 bucks. And you're just like, God damn it, why do people pay so little? What's wrong with people? Aren't people good people? Don't they see that this item is more valuable than that? Why don't they offer me more? Why don't they pay me more? I'm turning over losses every single month. And you will keep doing that. You will keep making losses in your store until you change the motherfucking price tag on these items. Because you cannot expect people to start just giving you the appropriate amount of money if you don't tell them the appropriate price, right? Whatever you price yourself at or your items at, that's what people are gonna pay. So that's where it truly starts. And you gotta take responsibility for all of that completely by yourself. So you're going to have to analyze and say, what price tag do I currently have on myself? Meaning, how much do I value myself? And how much you have to really think about this. You have to really start asking yourself questions. And this is also a part of the work that I do with people, with private clients. If you want to know more about that, just book a chat with me in the description, in the link in the description here. But it's really question asking and bringing to the awareness what your current mental blueprint is, in the sense of, okay, how much do you value yourself? What do you actually subconsciously expect? Because everybody has a subconscious expectation of how much someone will come towards them. If someone like texts you and you text them back with a very short thing, you wouldn't do that because it's like, oh, then your subconscious expectation is like, oh, they're not gonna send a third response back, right? That's like an example. And then from there, we need to talk about how you actually make that happen. How do you change that price tag on your forehead? Because the biggest thing that determines that, right, as I said, it's your sub-communication. But where does your sub-communication actually come from? It's a good question to ask yourself. It's coming from your self-image. It comes from your self-perception, right? How valuable you perceive yourself. And where does that come from? Where did that originate from? Well, that largely originates from the ages 0 to 7, okay? Because you had early life experiences that started building certain belief systems and started putting yourself in a box before you had a conscious mind, went straight into your subconscious of how much value you have, how you relate to other people. Are you usually the number one in the group? Are you usually the popular kid? Do you get chased by women, or do you always chase women? Do you have to chase down people to make plans, or do people actually come to you to make plans? Like, have you ever actually thought about the fact that it can happen that if you are just normal, cool, and you just actually don't initiate anything, but you're just normal, cool, and you respond to people and stuff like that, but you just kind of leave it at that, you know, it's actually possible for people to ask you out. That it's actually possible for friends to want to hang out with you or whatever, right? Well, a lot of people subconsciously, again, subconsciously literally means that you're not aware of it. They just don't have that as a possibility in their mind. So therefore, they're always the one pursuing. They're always the one chasing, right? And this can even be the case in sales and business, right? And it translates over directly to that. So it is actually possible for it to be different. But first we have to start with that belief system. So once again, that is obviously built from 0 to 7, right? And so the first part and the fundamental inside out job that I've been talking about is to change your price tag. And how we do that is by literally, you have to understand that you have a belief system right now of like, okay, I'm X valuable, or I don't get chased by people or whatever, right? This or that. I don't necessarily have relationship on my terms, whatever, right? I am X type person, okay? I'm not a popular person, whatever, right? So we can start changing those belief systems by literally affirming to ourselves the opposing belief system, right? So you can start saying to yourself, I am someone who's popular. I am someone who people love. I am someone who, you know, attracts people naturally. I am extremely magnetic and charismatic. When I walk into a room, people look after me. right? That kind of stuff. Now, it's going to feel fake at the beginning, but that is just because it is a mismatch with the current data that's in there, right? So the current data that's in there, the way to get it out and to change it is by overloading such an amount of new data that is opposing that, and it is in line with the belief system that you actually want to have, that it washes over the old program. And that's how you change anything in your life. Now, we can do that through those words and affirmations. We can do that through shifting your mental stance, right? Throughout the day, consciously choosing to come from this personality who has that belief system, and then faking until you make it, essentially. But I like to say, step into the belief until you achieve it, right? Stepping into that belief, shifting your mental stance, just like you switch any physical stance, right? I've said this many times in videos. And so from there on, there's multiple things that we can do, right? So it's visualization. It can be real world experiences. So when you say these words, right? I personally have a list of any trait that I wanted to build in myself. I have a list in my iCloud notes of, for example, that trait. So I'll give you a funny example. I wanted to be more lucky because I had a friend and he was just so lucky. The shit was just coming towards him. He was just fucking finding money on the street, basically. And I was like, I want to be more lucky. Why am I not more lucky? And I realized everything in life is a belief system, or everything in life comes from a belief system. So I was like, do I believe I'm lucky? Well, yeah, kind of, but not necessarily anything special. And I started building a belief system. And guess what? I got invited for a huge TV show in my home country. Started getting just more shit handed towards me. I don't remember exactly, it was a while ago, but I had in my iCloud note that belief system I was focusing on at the time, and I would write down the events, right, of when I felt like that was true. And then I would look at it every day, and I would add a new event every day. And then that builds the belief system because there's more references. Because a belief is like a table, right? It's like the top, like right there. There's actually no fucking legs under it, but right there, as you see, the top is the belief, and it's supported by the legs. If you take out the fucking legs, seems to be only one leg on this motherfucker, so it's not that strong. But if you take out that leg, table's gonna fall, right? Because it has nothing to stand on. So obviously we need to focus on the references, not just the belief. And so that's what this does. This trains your brain to focus on the reality of that. Like, let me give you an example. If I take a person that you really like, someone not too long ago, this is a great fucking example, asked me, oh, I really want to get over my ex. And I was like, stop being a fucking pussy and do it. But after that, I gave him some tips. So I was like, listen, what did you actually, why is it your ex even? Why did you break up? This and that, right? And I started building on that. And I started getting and gathering all the negative evidence or all the negative references that this person has associated to their ex. And so after about 5 to 10 minutes, they weren't missing that fucking ex so much anymore. Because now they were focused completely on all those negative reasons, all the reasons why they shouldn't be together, all the negative references, which built the belief system after that moment that the ex is not even that good, okay? And most people are completely delusional in this regardless, right? They're always like, oh, well, my ex, bro, it's just because you don't got no fucking options. And your brain latches onto the only thing that could make you reproduce, right? So stop being a pussy and start thinking in hypothetical scenarios. What if you had 10 top models, intelligent women, super confident, high self-esteem, feminine women at your beck and with at your disposal? Then you wouldn't miss your ex. So it's not about your ex. It's about you not having the options, okay? People just make dumb decisions based on that out of scarcity, okay? So anyways, like for example, if you had a business that was making you 10K a month, but you lost it and you had no foresight of any other business or any other way to make money, you're gonna miss that business. But if you had another foresight of something that made you 100 grand a month, now you don't miss that business anymore, do you? It's all simple. So anyways, this thing is like, if you have a person that you like a lot right now, right? Your belief is this is a great person, but I start asking questions and I start digging in and I start finding out all the little things that they've done to you that are actually not nice, and I start getting you to really focus on those things. And now that's really in your mind. You don't like that person anymore, right? Because now we build these references. Now, potentially there's no negative references, right? Or very little. So then obviously it can't be done. But that is how it works. And so you can literally apply that to yourself with building a belief system in anything that you want. Like you have to just think of your mind like a toolbox, and you just construct it any way that you want that is workable for the result that you want. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, because with time, work and the choices of the right beliefs, it will become true. Because if you believe it, it has to manifest into the external reality anyway. So it doesn't fucking matter if you think you're charismatic or not, or if you are truly charismatic or not. It just matters if you believe you are or not. Because if you believe you're charismatic, buddy, you're gonna be charismatic because your body will follow the belief system. And that's why what I do with people is completely different than all these fucking dumbass textbooks that tell you to look someone in the eyes and to shake their hand and remember their name. We're going 500 layers deeper than that kind of superficial bullshit. And the last thing that I want to end this video off with is the fact that this is not just about communication, right? This is not just about getting good relationships and this and that. And you know, it's not just about walking around like you're a cool dude. This is also about quite literally your entire life. Because the price tag that you have on yourself not only shows people how much to pay for you, right? In terms of actions and whatnot, but it also shows you what actions to take for yourself, because it will keep you trapped in the prison of that price tag. So if your price tag and your self-value, right, within whatever domain that it may be, is, for example, $1 million, or your self-value is a girl of this level, or your self-value is a body of this level. You even have self-value in terms of how clean your room is. Like, my shit is pretty damn clean, except for that fucking plate, because I was about to finish that. But that is also a standard. It's all the same. It's your identity, your self-image, your standards, okay? All of that is the same. And it just comes down to, once again, the price tag you have for that domain in your life. And so we even have standards for like how clean our house is, right? Because think about it. Your room will get messier every single day. And then at some point, you reached your standard and you're like, shit, I gotta clean my shit. Now, I actually have cleaners. They actually just finished. And that's why I'm recording this video now. But the point that I'm making to you is you essentially have this thermostat in your mind. And when it gets too hot, you turn on the AC, right? And that is in every area of your life. So when your room gets too messy, now you're gonna clean it up. But you can also lower that standard. And so now your room is gonna get super messy before you clean it up. Or you can raise that standard. So raising the standard for how clean your room should be. And so now you're gonna get, your AC is gonna kick in sooner because you lowered the temperature. You lowered the threshold for when it should be kicking in. So that standard you can play with. Now, how do you change it? Is by starting out of awareness, figuring out, okay, what is my actual current standard? And then choosing a new standard. And then having, so that's the first part, awareness, then choosing the new standard, and then having reasons, right? So that you have leverage, that you really want that new standard and why it's important, because your brain won't change shit if it's not important enough. Reasons come first, answers come second. That is the second step. And then the third step is finding evidence for the fact that that is true, so that it becomes a part of you, right? And so that is the thing that I mentioned earlier with finding evidence, finding real world events that show you that you are this person. That yes, this is true. This is what it actually is. This is what my standard is. This is what I naturally attract in terms of money, relationships, and whatever. Okay? And that formula, I promise you guys, if you found this video, then you should consider yourself lucky, because these are some random ass, raw, unfiltered videos that I post up on YouTube, because honestly, I love shooting this. I love just sharing whatever I can that may or may not help one or two people that view this video. So if it did, I'm truly happy that it did. And you can always shoot me a quick message on Instagram. My Instagram is @BoydHook. I'll pop it in the description as well. If you want to chat to me about more of what we can do together to increase your potential threshold and your success in your life and your self-confidence, relationships, abundance, whatever it is that you're after, then you can also check the link in the description. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one, and I hope that helped.